Look at this thing flying in. That was awesome. Nice fish. Alright, I told you we were coming back, and here we are in Mille Lacs. After that last video, we snuck out one night to check things out again, and we smoked like 9 fish and they were fired up. So we're coming back with cameras, and usually that's a curse for the bite to go negative. So we'll see how that works out, but we're here. It's a gorgeous day. It's 30 degrees all weekend, and I plan to spend 90% of the weekend bahing around trying to put some aggressive walleyes topside. By the way, I promise we will do a snowmobile walkthrough soon. I meant to do it by now, but this Titan has been a dream come true this season, and it's also my fault that we haven't had any snow or ice for a month and a half because we picked this bad boy up, so you can blame me. But ice is pretty good now, especially for sleds. Let's get to getting it. Yeah, baby. Literally my favorite way to catch walleyes through the ice. Let's talk rattle bait walleyes. It's been going down the last few days. We finally have warm weather, and just as importantly, stable weather. And those fish were so negative during that cold front and the couple days crawling out of it, and now they're snapping at sunrise and sunset. And rattle baits have been killing it for me, not just on Mille Lacs. I've been on 3 or 4 different lakes around the Brainerd area, including Mille Lacs, and I've seen the same thing on every single one. Just finished poking some holes, snooping around, trying to get the first one of the night to come through. Early. And a little custom painted rippin' wrap. It's a good sign. There he goes. Come again. So apparently I need to get a camera set up. It's 2 minutes later, drop down, cracked another one, still trying to get set up. This is ridiculous. Whoops. Sorry about that. Help me help you. Rattlebait walleyes for that hour during the sunset and sunrise period, and they are out fishing everything. The crazy thing is, I have fish that swim straight up and look at a sucker minnow or shiner or fathead and go, nope, instead I'm gonna go eat that obnoxious rattling chunk of plastic with treble hooks coming out of it. When they want it, and you almost can't keep it away from them. If they miss it, they'll circle back around, they'll come back and eat it. It's unbelievable. When they don't want it, it's the exact opposite. It's 2 extremes. When they don't want it, you can watch them sometimes come in 10, 12, 15 feet away from you, and you'll just go, and you'll see that fish turn around and leave. So it's a day-to-day thing. It's an hour-to-hour thing. You have to pay attention to the mood of the fish on your sonar to know if it's going down that day or not. You don't need a live scope. You can use a Vexlar, a 1993 FL8, and still see that, okay, I have a fish down there and I move this thing and it takes off, it spooks, it's gone so fast, and you know it's time to put the rattles away, go to something a little more subtle. But when they're eating it, the drawing power is unbelievable. Fishing side by side with someone with a jigging spoon, or having that dead stick down and seeing time and time again where they go by for the rattle bait is just ridiculous. Oh, we got one eyeing up the dead stick. We got a little sucker minnow on there. It's coming up to look at it. It's moving kind of slow. Definitely not a giant fish. Well, here we go. Oh. Almost got to figure out where their ceiling is for how high up you can get them to come. That one does not want to come higher than that. There we go. So my favorite thing about that is it looked right at a sucker minnow and then said, no thanks, I'd rather eat a rattlebait. We're not at Lake Winnipeg, we're not in Canada. We're over on Mille Lacs. Number 5, Helsinki shad. But like I said, my favorite part, it looked at the sucker minnow. It came within 6 inches of it, was staring at it, and then went, no, I'd rather eat that big chunk of plastic that's going brr, brr, brr. Yup. Oh. The fish has given me every opportunity to catch him. Well, the fact that he came back, he'll probably bite again. Otherwise, he would have gotten the heck out of here. Yup. Wow. Another one of them dumb ones that gives you a second chance. Oh, that's wild. So right now, we're still set up on shoreline structure out here. I'm in 22-ish feet of water. Kind of a little hard spot. I wouldn't necessarily call it a hump because it's still connected to shoreline structure, kind of a little finger that jogs out. But there's no weeds near me, and I'm in 22 feet, and they are crushing this Rippin Rap. And a lot of the times, if you see me posting Rippin Rap stuff, I'm fishing weed line fish. So I mean, obviously, when they want that rattlebait, you can fish a little bit anywhere. But one of my favorite places to fish it is actually shallow weed edge fish. In 15 to 17, 18 feet of water, kind of where those cabbage weeds and coontail taper off, and you got that weed wall, having fish following that thing, looking for little silver dollar bluegills, which look just like a Rippin Rap, looking for perch. But it's just a highway to bring fish to you. And even when I'm not fishing weedline stuff, like today on Mille Lacs, I'm still trying to use things to bring fish to me for those sunset bites. During the day, I'll hop around on mud flats, drill a bunch of holes, keep moving, but during that prime time bite, that 1 hour window, I want to be set up on the best spot. So I'll look around in daylight and then set up shop. This is actually kind of a big corner. So it jets in behind me and wraps back around, and I've got fish coming from both ways, basically coming to me. So saddles work great, inside corners, points, anything that if you look at on the map, it's almost like deer hunting. You're on those deer trails, and if you can find a place where 2 deer trails intersect, like on a saddle, or in a corner where you got 2 deer trails coming and they meet in the middle, it's just high percentage spots where you're setting up shop and having more fish come to you. You gonna eat that dead stick or not? Looks like yes. Look on LiveScope, you can see my sinker going to the side. So this is a pretty good sized sucker minnow. I'm just gonna give them a couple seconds. Alright, let's do it. Let's do this. Hooked up, baby. That's why when you're using a Rippin Rap, or anytime, you always have a second line off to the side to just double your odds. I guess I didn't have to let him eat it that long. He must have just engulfed it. There we go. All right. Little bonus set line fish. I'll take it. Trying to get my dead stick set up, but there's a nice mark down there. I guess we'll worry about the dead stick later. Look at this thing flying in. That was awesome. Sick. Nice fish. There we go. Got a nice rattle bait eating fish. I just popped that one on a dead stick. And I was trying to get that dead stick set back up. And before I could, this one came flying in and smoked that number 5 Helsinki shad. Rattle bait. We got some guests here.
How do you like that, Ella?
You want to see this?
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, I just went back to back on these buddies. So you can't see right now, but Nick Linder just poked in and his daughter Ella is here. Want to get a closer look? Are you having fun? Mm-hmm. Alright, I'm going to put this guy back.
Do you care if I rip a hole?
Whoa. So my confidence in rattle baits skyrocketed when I went to Lake Winnipeg, right? Rattle bait, walleye, capital of the world. Up there, we use the big number 7 Rippin Raps. I love that barb. Maybe number 6s sometimes, but those big, giant, like almost 1 ounce baits. Back home, I do the exact same thing, but it's just a little bit downsized, right? We're not looking for that 30-inch walleye every time we go. A lot of the times, a really good day, you catch 2 or 3 14 to 18-inch walleyes. You crushed it. If I did that, if I could guarantee I would catch 3 of those eater walleyes every time I went out around this central Minnesota area, clear watered pressure fish, I would take that every single time. So around here, I like using a number 5 Rippin Rap, a little bit smaller, still by walleye standards on pressured lakes, a big bait. But it looks like a crappie bait to the, you know, our friends up in Winnipeg and Manitoba. The biggest thing for these baits is how you work them. And everybody who hasn't fished one probably assumes that you're really ripping that bait. And it's nothing like open water Rippin Rap fishing. Just like jigging raps. You don't fish it anything like you would in the boat. For me, a big rip is 1 foot. Maybe 2 feet or whatever, and I'm not doing like a snappy, fast rip. It's more of just a and let it drop. And I'm only doing that when I'm not graphing fish. If I think maybe there's fish 100 feet that way or whatever, I'm not seeing them. Then I'll do those little 1 foot or 2 foot kind of lifts and let it flutter back down and roll it in place, rock it in place. If I don't see anything, I'll do another little but as soon as I'm graphing a fish, I drop way down, I pull way back, and then I'm just rocking that bait in place. And that is the biggest thing. When you're graphing a fish, one's coming, I very rarely have good experiences when I rip that bait in a 1 foot or 2 foot rip. It's more of a rolling the rod tip, basically keeping the weight of the bait on the tip of the rod so it's not going slack. I'm rolling it is my best explanation. And you'll see, I'll put a little cutaway here, that bait is sitting in place and the tail is just kind of kicking up. Folks have called that the buck and bronco for years, ever since Weeb did a video on the Red River catching rattle bait greenbacks. But you're rolling that bait in place, letting that tail kick, and just, you'll hear the rattles doing subtle little clicks, but it's not overly aggressive. And I'm slowly raising that bait as the fish is coming up to look at it. I'm just keeping it a little bit away from that fish, playing a little bit of cat and mouse, figuring out where their ceiling is. Some days you can get them to come 10 feet up for a bait. Some days, if it gets 2-3 feet off bottom, they'll hit the brakes, they'll go back down. And so figuring out where that ceiling is, but doing a slow pull away with that rocking motion, and then you're either going to feel a thump on the rod tip, or sometimes they go slack because they'll pick it up and hit it so hard. I almost never, ever tip Rippin Raps with minnow heads. Same with jigging raps, once in a great while, but it screws up the action. Even if you put the smallest fathead head on that belly treble hook of a Rippin Rap, in your rod tip when you pull up, instead of feeling that bait vibrating up, it like mutes it. It almost kills all of the vibration of that bait. And to me, if they're not committing to that Rippin Rap or rattle bait, then switch to a jigging spoon. Bonus points for not needing bait on a Rippin Rap. If you miss a fish, you don't have to worry about reeling up and put another minnow head on there. And that is so important for these sunset flash bites, because you gotta capitalize. These fish are coming through in little pods. It's so crazy how you very rarely graph one. Usually if you graph one, within the next 2-3 minutes you're gonna see 2-3 more come through. So there's just maximizing the amount of bites that you can convert into fish during that short bite window is so important. And it's so nice being able to, whether it's you miss a fish or you catch one, a lot of the times I'll catch one, I'll pop that bait off, I'll fire that bait right back down there while I'm still processing the fish. And it might catch you 1 more fish that night, it might catch you 3 more fish that night, but it's so nice not messing around with minnows. Except for on a dead stick. That's worth it. But that's all bonus stuff, bonus fish. I think the profile and action of the bait is more important than color. For me, color is more of a confidence thing, but that being said, I almost always tie on the Helsinki shad color first. I've just caught so many fish on that in dirty water, in clear water, lakes that are 14 hours apart from each other, they eat it. I do use some chrome colors on sunny days. That silvery chrome with the blue back is killer. And I'll play around with other colors too when I'm fishing more in the weed line. Then instead of going with that kind of shiner shad baitfish color, I'll go to more like perchy and bluegill colors and just sort of match the hatch for what I'm fishing. But like I said, I think it's personal preference. I think if they want that rattle bait action, they want that rattle bait action. Big one. Get him, Jer. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Got him. Oh shoot. I can't grab it. You want to take my phone? How did I not lose that thing? Dude, me trying to grab the handle was like pawing at the air. Pawing at the air. That's a big one. I got a bad hook set. How did he stay on? This might be the biggest of the night again. Oh, come on. Turn up the hole. Can't get his head turned. Oh. Look at that fish, man. Oh. Look at that one, dude. Look at the belly on that thing. Oh. Yes. If you're coming to Mille Lacs, I would get some number 5 Helsinki shad Rippin Raps. That's a bruiser. Oh, dude. So one little modification I make to almost all my Rippin Raps, and I gotta give a shout out to Doug Wagner. I saw him post a tip about this for open water spring Rippin Rap fishing on Green Bay, and that is bumping up the hook size on the back hook. So they traditionally come with 1 size bigger hook in the belly than the tail. On a number 5 Rippin Rap, we got number 8 hooks on the belly, number 10s on the tail stock, and I will bump the hook size up on that back hook to whatever the belly is. So like I said, on number 5s, that's an 8. And I've just found that I have a better hookup ratio and land more fish just by upsizing that hook 1 size. My favorite Rippin Rap setup for lakes around here, clear water, zebra mussels, I'm using an 8-pound mono mainline, Sufix Advance Ice Mono, and I will do a tiny number 12 or number 10 stainless steel rolling swivel, 8 or 10 pound fluorocarbon leader, to a little number 0 00 VMC Crankbait Snap with these number 5 Rippin Raps. I'll use this size 0 crankbait snap if I'm using number 6 or number 7 Rippin Raps, but around here this is usually my go-to size. And you guessed it, a 38-inch Tune-Up Custom Rods Commander. It's an extra fast rod, tons of power for driving those hooks home. I love the backbone. A lot of the times with Rippin Raps, you're going to catch some of your biggest fish of the ice season. Not saying little ones won't eat it too, but it's really good at catching above average fish. So I love having that power of that commander rod. And like I've said before, I use that mono line to help with being the shock absorber, so I don't need a soft medium light rod to absorb all those head shakes so much as I've got that mono to help aid with a little bit of stretch. Assuming you saw that, where he was looking at that dead stick, and I just slowly started lifting it up, and he hated that thing moving away from him. It's too bad that one didn't come in on the Rippin Rap side, but like I said before, I'll take them any way I can get them. It's another nice little average eater size. So as far as my dead stick setup goes, I'm using sucker minnows with the discontinued but awesome VMC SureSet Treble. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a really long hook for one of them and then the standard treble size hooks for the other two, and I love hooking those things in the back with that bigger hook pointing forward so that when a walleye grabs it, they get that front hook, and then this way hook just behind the dorsal fin. That minnow is sitting level and forward, but I'm running it on a 38-inch tuned up custom rods Vulcan. It's similar to the Commander. It's kind of like a power walleye rod, except for instead of graphite, this one is actually fiberglass, which is crazy because it's the most sensitive fiberglass rod I've ever used, but it's not quite as fast of an action. It's a little bit slower, but still tons of backbone. Awesome dead stick rod, especially if you're using iFish Pros, Clam Predator tip-ups, automatic hook setting devices. You really shouldn't use a graphite rod in automatic hook setting devices because you're going to explode that thing. And that's where fiberglass rods shine. I have 8-pound Sufix Mono mainline, a little swivel, split shot, and then an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I usually am setting this thing closer to bottom, 6 inches, sometimes a foot off, but I like keeping my dead stick closer to bottom for those more neutral, negative fish. And then with my active rod, the one I'm jigging, the one I'm working, I keep that a little higher up. And then that one flies right past the Rippin Rap to eat the dead stick, of course. But it's that time of night. We're well past sunset. The fish's mood has changed. They went from snapping and aggressive to slinking in along bottom. And the last week here on probably 3 or 4 different lakes I've been on, I've seen the same exact thing. That hour at sunset, half hour before, half hour after, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, is hot to trot, and they will just crush those Rippin Raps, and they prefer them over minnows. But then after the sun sets and things slow down, look at that big old sucker minnow coming out of that thing. Give me that back. Then everything just slows down, and they're moving slower, they're tighter to bottom, and they're just fussier and pickier, but you can still pick a few up on dead sticks. I think I'm gonna wrap this video up. It's about 7 o'clock now. I'm still having a few fish come through, but the mood is completely changed. Now they're just belly to the bottom. They're moving in slow. The last couple have come on dead sticks, which is always a fun little bonus, but The main bite window has come and gone, and I think if I kept sitting here the next few hours, I'd maybe have 1 or 2 come through. 45 minutes or an hour later, another 1 come through, something like that. But instead, I'm going to go back home, dry out the gear, and prepare for the morning bite, and come take advantage for that flash bite at sunrise again tomorrow. So I hope you learned some rattle bait tips in this video. We actually had a nice flurry of fish, got a couple of nicer fish, but for me, there's no more fun way to pluck walleyes through the ice than rattle baits.
Oh, you there.